On this episode of RevHang, Ben and I talk about the Formula One Bahrain Grand Prix and the IndyCar Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Let's do it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to RevHang. I'm Nathan, and alongside me, through the mighty power of the internet, is my good friend and co-host Ben Bagley. How's it going, Ben?
It's going great. I got a haircut. You can't see it, but I did.
This is true. I cannot see it, but I'm sure it looks great. I need a haircut as well, sort of, a little bit. It's been a little bit, but I'm okay for a little bit. And every time I say I need a haircut, I wait like 3 months, and then it gets unmanageable, and then it's just shameful to go in.
Yeah, we're in an era where it's okay if you don't get your hair cut immediately. You can stand to have a little longer hair for a while.
That's fair. We can all look like Colton Herta for a little bit.
Oof. Wouldn't want to look like Colton Herta after this last race. That's what I'm saying.
Very true. Very true. Rough, but true. Yeah, speaking of which, we've got a couple races to get through today with the IndyCar Grand Prix of St. Petersburg and the Formula One Bahrain Grand Prix. So let's start with IndyCar. We were in St. Petersburg, Florida this week at the street track there. I really like this track. It's super short, but very technical and catches a lot of people out, as we will talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So, to give you some context, we'll start with qualifying, give you the top 10. In the Fast 6, we had Roman Grosjean on pole position, followed by Colton Herta, Pato O'Ward, Marcus Ericsson, Kyle Kirkwood, and Scott McLaughlin. And then finishing the top 10 was Alex Palou, Felix Rosenqvist, Scott Dixon, and Will Power. Roman Grosjean on pole, I think this is the third time he's been on pole position in
Third or
his
fourth,
IndyCar
yeah.
career. Yeah, it's been a good few times. And then we had a really good showing from Kyle Kirkwood. He was up there kind of out of nowhere. He wasn't anywhere near the top last season, but he has made strides.
Yeah, Andretti had a really strong showing during qualifying.
Yes, they did during qualifying, yes.
Not during any other time during the race.
No, unfortunately for them. But let's get into it. There was a massive accident on lap 1 after the start. Lots of cars were involved. I think there were 4 or 5 DNFs because of it. Dave Francesco got T-boned at a really high-speed part of the track and went airborne, flew over another car, I think. It was a pretty scary accident, actually. I was glad that everybody was okay. One thing that I noticed that IndyCar does differently than Formula One is they will absolutely zoom in and replay the crash before they know everybody's okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's just
content,
an America
baby.
thing. What's that?
That's content, baby. And honestly, the Indy cars are so durable. I mean, the amount of shit I've seen these in Dallara chassis go through compared to like a Formula One car, for example. Like, you could drive this thing through a war zone and I'm sure it'd probably be okay.
Yeah, they are much more durable than an F1 car. They don't disintegrate when they get hit.
Yeah, and even if they can't drive afterwards, it at least means the driver has a bit better chance of surviving some truly horrific stuff.
Yeah. There's also a lot more padding in the cockpit. I would say that they could probably go a little heavier on the safety measures because it's all the same chassis for every driver, so there's nothing to be gained by taking weight out.
Yeah.
So IndyCars are pretty durable, pretty safe, and I think the aero screen is really cool. I would not be surprised if F1 eventually adopts that, just based on the success of the Halo and even the success of the aero screen in IndyCar. Eventually I could see F1 having that, but who knows?
Yeah, the IndyCar, the AMR response times actually seem really fast compared to some other race series too. Like,
yeah,
they had 3 trucks out there, but like before the cars even finished the first lap.
Yeah, no, the AMR, the IndyCar response team is definitely top notch. They're always there within seconds of accidents. I think there was kind of a conversation we had last year, or it might have been 2 years ago after the Grosjean crash, that Formula One needs to study IndyCar and their safety team in make changes, because sometimes it seems like after Formula One crashes, it can take quite a while for somebody to pull onto the scene. But in IndyCar, it's within seconds every time. I remember a massive Colton Herta crash at an oval. I think it was at Indianapolis last season, where he went upside down and slid halfway down the racetrack, and the AMR team was there before he stopped sliding, I felt like.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
It's the power of the Chevy Silverado, baby.
Yeah. All right, moving on. After they got all that accident cleaned up, Grosjean and Herta pulled away on the restart. Absolutely flew away from the rest of the field. I think they pulled like 7 seconds to award in third place in like 2 or 3 laps.
Yeah.
Which was, an okay strategy for Grosjean, as he was in clean air, but a little questionable from Colton Herta, because he was in Grosjean's dirty air and absolutely cooking his tires.
Yeah, I can't remember. I feel like I heard team radio, but I don't remember if they were telling him to back off or to try to keep pace with Grosjean during that
I think
stint.
they were telling him to... I don't think they told him explicitly what to do, but I think they did tell him, like, hey, remember, you have tires that need to make it to this lap.
Right, yeah.
So I don't know. But, yeah, he ended up having to stop early, I think, because he just absolutely cooked his tires.
Yeah, he lost like 6 seconds, and he had to stop early.
Yeah, pretty much kind of ruined his race a little bit.
Yeah. They gave great opportunity for everyone behind him, and it kind of gave everybody else data on if their stop strategies were going to work, and kind of opened the floodgates to everyone else a few laps later.
Yeah, he was the guinea pig because of that. And on the other side of the coin, we have Scott McLaughlin, who took really good care of his tires, but also maintained a pretty good position. I don't remember exactly where he was. I think he was in 6th or somewhere around there. He just took care of his tires until he was able to push later on. He started on the primaries, whereas everybody in front of him started on the alternate tires, the softer ones. So he was on a different strategy, but it definitely worked out because he jumped 4 or 5 people pretty quickly after the pit stops. So on lap 42, we had another massive incident. Kyle Kirkwood hit the back of another car. There was kind of an accordion effect just because of how the crash happened. In terms of the people behind, it really wasn't anybody's fault. But Kirkwood hit the back of another car and went airborne. Absolutely demolished his suspension, but somehow limped back to the pits.
Incredible.
And they managed to get it fixed after like 6 laps.
The only Andretti Autosport car to finish the race.
Yep, and it was 6 laps down. Yeah, not the greatest showing from Andretti for sure. Speaking of which, later on, after the restart, Herta and Power came together, and that sent Herta into the wall, and that ended his race, unfortunately for him. It was a kind of 50-50 incident. Herta was a little aggressive, but Power did go wide on the corner, and Power did get a penalty for it, and I would have put it on Power anyway. But yeah, I don't know. It was just hard racing from both drivers, just unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it was the right call, but I also wouldn't have been mad if it was just a racing incident.
Yeah, same here. It's really hard because they kept talking about it throughout the whole race, and you could see if you deviate from the racing line at all there, you're just in the marbles, and your tires get absolutely filthy, and you lose all sorts of grip. Like you had people like O'Ward who would pull out on the main straight, and he would like the rear of his car would get unstable and like wiggle around, and he's just on a straight. It was pretty insane.
Yeah, on these street circuits, it gets really dirty really quick, and there's so little room for the racing line to shed off material that if you go anywhere else, especially with all the drivers starting on the alternates, just the super sticky tires that shed during the tight stuff, that makes pretty hectic turns if you go off the line.
Yeah, for sure. Through all of this, McLaughlin cycled to the front after the pit stops, and Grosjean managed to continue to hunt him down. for pretty much the rest of the race, or at least the second third of it. On lap 72, Grosjean was he had just pit the lap before, and McLaughlin was coming out of the pits on cold tires. They went through turn 1 and 2 and got down to turn 3, and they were side by side. Grosjean was on the outside, McLaughlin on the inside, and unfortunately McLaughlin did not brake early enough on his cold tires, and he absolutely sent Grosjean to the Shadow Realm.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I saw that. No way, because either of these two guys could have easily won the race if they had stayed apart from each other. Like, those were the two top competitors that I thought were going to win up till that point. Because Grosjean just had incredible pace, but Kirkwood had a really good strategy and was able to hold off on his pits and get that stuff sorted out. And then they both just crashed.
Yeah, I was really sad. I was rooting for Grosjean. I really hope he wins the race this season. He just seems so confident in his car. We'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, I'm definitely a Grosjean fan now, I think. Felt really bad for him when he got punted.
Yeah. Better luck next time.
Yeah. So yeah, they ended their race, and that promoted Pato O'Ward to the lead. McLaughlin was actually able to continue after kind of getting out of the wall, but he was sent to the back of the field as a penalty for causing the collision. I think that's pretty fair. O'Ward was able to hold off Ericsson in P2 for the remainder of the race until, unfortunately, an engine stutter. They talked about some overboost. I don't even know. I didn't understand it, but basically the engine lost power for a split second on the entrance to the straight, which basically compromised his line into the straight, and Ericsson was pretty easily able to pass him. Like, it was so extreme that I thought O'Ward had an engine failure and was just coasting, but
yeah, essentially what happened is overboost is essentially you get a detonation in the plenum where the air and fuel mixes before being sent into the motor. It's kind of like a backfire-ish is the most simple way I can describe it. But yeah, essentially it just sucks all the air out of the motor because it cavitates inside the plenum and sucks all the air out.
Gotcha. This is why I love having a former race car engineer on the podcast.
Love it.
Thank you, Ben. So Ericsson passed him onto the straight and then went and drove into the sunset. He was a good few seconds ahead by the end, and he was followed across the line by O'Ward in second and Scott Dixon in third. So, results of the race we'll go through real quick. Winning the race was Marcus Ericsson, like I said, followed by Pato O'Ward and Scott Dixon. And then 4 and 5 was Alexander Rossi and Callum Ilott. Ilott had a great showing. Just had his rookie season last year, so he's a new guy. Good to see him up top. 6 through 10 was Graham Rahal, Will Power, Alex Palou, Christian Lundgaard, and David Malukas. 11 through 15 was Marcus Armstrong, Augustine Canapino, Scott McLaughlin, Connor Daly, and Kyle Kirkwood. And then 16 and 17 we had Stingray Robb and Joseph Newgarden. 18th place, we had Romain Grosjean, who did not finish the race. He retired. 19th place, I think 49 laps down. He somehow got running again, but was 49 laps down. We had Felix Rosenqvist. And then everybody else, I think, from here on out is, DNFs. So in 20th, we have Colton Herta, followed by Renus VK, Jack Harvey, Helio Castroneves, Santino Ferrucci, Devlin DeFrancesco, Simon Pagino, and Benjamin Peterson.
Yeah, like I said at the last episode, chaos is what I want. It's what I got.
Yes, you willed it into existence.
Spoke into power. Yeah.
It was a very entertaining race. It did take 3 hours though, and that was a little rough.
It's definitely one that I was glad that I watched it on my own time on streaming.
Yeah. For sure.
So say what you will about Peacock, but there's a convenience factor there.
Yes, absolutely. I did stream it live, and I was getting worried that it wasn't going to end the race before I had to go to work, but they just squeaked it in. So yeah, good race. We had tons of cautions, I think 5 or 6. You got the chaos that you prayed to the racing gods for.
Yep.
But yeah, talking about Roman Grosjean, who got on pole position and led a good chunk of the race. He appears very confident in his Andretti car and team. More so than last year, even. I think he's very quick. I don't know if it's just the combination of this track and his skill set, but he just seems like he's got the car under him. He knows what he's doing. He's not afraid to send it, and he did. And unfortunately, it didn't stick. But he definitely seems fearless, which is a good thing in a series like IndyCar.
It's promising for the future.
Absolutely. Andretti lost every single one of their cars this race. Horrible showing from them.
Except for Kyle Kirkwood.
Except for Kyle Kirkwood, who finished 6 laps down.
But he did technically finish.
But he did finish. He got, I think, 15th or something like that.
Yeah.
If you finish halfway up the order when you're 6 laps down, that just shows how crazy of a race it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully they get the ball rolling next race. So Alexander Rossi also has settled nicely into his Aero McLaren car. I think he finished, what did he finish? 4th? Pretty good for his first race with a new team, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty good.
Yeah. It'd be really cool if he had a great season. Whoops. Sorry, bumped my mic. I would love him to have a great season. I like Rossi a lot. I think the first Indy 500 I watched was 2016, and he's the one who won it as a rookie. So, yeah, I've always kind of liked Rossi. Just a fantastic start to the IndyCar season. You can't really ask for much better than that in terms of a entertaining race.
Yeah, I think that was a really good introduction to the 2023 season. And I think that anybody who just started out watching IndyCar will have really enjoyed it. That's kind of the sentiment that I saw on Reddit too.
Yeah, I think so too. It was very entertaining. There's some IndyCar races can be kind of boring, especially ovals if you don't really understand what's going on. And we got an oval up next at Texas Motor Speedway, so the uninitiated will be taught.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy oval races a lot more than I used to, just because I kind of understand it now, get what's going on a little bit more.
Yeah, once you start to understand how they work and where to look for the action and the movement, it gets a lot more entertaining to watch.
Yeah, for sure. But that wraps up IndyCar for this week. Now let's move on to Formula One and the Bahrain Grand Prix. Starting off with qualifying, we'll go through the top 10 to give you some context. On pole position, surprise, surprise, was Max Verstappen. Followed in second by Sergio Perez. And then third and fourth were Leclerc and Sainz in the 2 Ferraris. 5th place, we had the man, the myth, the legend, Fernando Alonso. And then 6th and 7th, we had the 2 Mercedes of Russell and Hamilton. 8th place, we had Lance Stroll. 9th and 10th were Ocon and Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg with a great qualifying for a Haas. I will say my full year predictions for Haas being the 5th fastest car, not looking great so far.
No, not really.
No, but Hülkenberg is putting the car in places it shouldn't be. He just unfortunately had an incident in the race that kind of ruined it, but we'll get there. Yeah, great qualifying from Aston Martin. Lance Stroll, P8 with 2 injured wrists and a broken toe. Like, that's kind of insane.
Yeah, especially when you think about, I mean, the F1 cars have power steering, but the brakes take so much force. And if you ever tried to drive like a truck with a clutch or something like that, like a real heavy clutch with a hurt foot, it really hurts.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Not fun.
So trying to do the same thing in an F1 car, haul it down from speed with those brakes is no mean feat.
Yeah. for sure. Yeah, you need quite a bit of pressure because well, that's interesting. The braking system in an F1 car is obviously different than in a normal road car. The pedal really doesn't move at all. It just kind of takes the pressure input, and it's a brake-by-wire system, so I think it's all done electronically.
Is it
Um,
really? I actually never thought about that. Never looked
yeah,
that up.
yeah,
Huh.
it's not hydraulics. I don't believe.
I mean, that makes sense.
Um, yeah, right. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like you think about a brake pedal that doesn't move at all. It's just kind of a foreign concept to anybody who's driven a road car.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's how they get the performance out, I guess. It's definitely you can't really have a spongy brake pedal in a race car. It doesn't work as well.
No. I guess
But
you're pretty
anyway,
limited for space too. You don't want huge movements to have to make with your feet.
right. All right, so getting into the race, Leclerc and Sainz actually got really good starts. Leclerc was able to take second from Perez, who did not get a good start. Verstappen did maintain the lead and drove off into the sunset, and that's probably the last time we'll talk about him this race.
Yep. I honestly kind of forgot he existed until he won the race.
Yeah, I think we had like maybe 10 seconds of Verstappen airtime, and it was the start of the race, and when he crossed the finish line.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he was all alone the entire time. uh, so also on lap one, Lance Stroll ran into the back of his teammate Fernando Alonso, causing
Great
both
start
cars
to
to
the
lose
season.
positions. Yeah, not the best start. Injury or not, you're not supposed to hit your teammate. Um, that could have been way worse. They both got very lucky that
Yeah.
there was no damage. Alonso could have very easily walked out of that with a puncture and dropped to the back of the field, but luckily he didn't. His car was fine. Stroll's car was fine as well. They both kind of got away with one, but Alonso did drop a couple spots, so he had some work to do to make that up. On lap 13, speaking of which, Alonso was able to hunt down George Russell and pass him. Bottas had a strong showing early on in the race. He was right up there with Alonso and Russell. He kind of came out of nowhere. Where did he qualify? Qualified 12th, so he jumped a lot of people.
Yeah.
Definitely a great start for him. Oscar Piastri shortly after, maybe even before this, retired due to an electrical problem with the car. His steering wheel stopped working, and so they had him pit, and they replaced his steering wheel, and we got to watch the McLaren like Dawson loading screen, which was kind of entertaining.
Yeah.
But it didn't fix the problem, so he retired due to no fault of his own. But he wasn't running super well anyway.
No. Neither of the McLarens were running super well.
No, but it's hard to tell if it's because of the car or, well, it was because of the car that they weren't running well. But
Yeah.
it's hard to tell where they are on pace still, is what I'm saying.
Ah.
Because Lando Norris had pit early and multiple times throughout the race due to a pneumatic leak. They had to keep refilling that system. And what did he end up with? Where does it say down here? I think 6 pit stops that race. Not what you want.
No.
So unfortunately, Lando did not have the best race. Esteban Ocon also did not have the best race. Man, racking up penalty points like it's no one's business. I think he thought they were world championship points.
That was so painful.
Yeah.
He was just, yeah, watching him try to just get back out into the racetrack. Yeah.
It was kind of sad. It's like you see him serve his penalty, and then he leaves the pits, and then you see a flag come on the screen that says Esteban Ocon gets another 10-second penalty or whatever.
No.
Yeah, not the greatest race from him, unfortunately. But Sergio Perez had a pretty good race after the start. He passed Leclerc on lap 26 again for P2. Lance Stroll was able to get past George Russell in the Mercedes on lap 32 to take P7. Shortly after, on lap 38, Alonso was able to pass Lewis Hamilton in a crazy and amazing move for P5. On lap 41, Charles Leclerc had an engine failure. We'll get into the Ferrari woes in a little bit. but that caused the virtual safety car, first safety car thing in 2023. It was the only one of the race. Just that one VSC. It was pretty short, lasted only a lap or two, I think. And then on lap 45, Alonso was able to pass Carlos Sainz for P3, the final podium position. And not much happened after that. The race ended. Verstappen, Perez, Alonso on the podium.
Which everybody just lost their minds over.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. I don't think anybody, if you said a week ago that Alonso would be faster than both Mercedes and both Ferraris, like, no one would believe you. It was pretty crazy.
Remember you were saying Mercedes figured out their car problems and there would be no problems?
Yeah, that was before I saw that they stuck with their no side pod design.
Before we saw the car.
Yeah, we'll talk about that too. But yeah, it doesn't look like Mercedes is going to be P2 in the championship like I was thinking.
They're going to have a bad time, I think.
Yeah. Well, time will tell. So the results for the race. In first place was Max Verstappen by a country mile, followed by Sergio Perez and Fernando Alonso rounding off the podium. Fourth and fifth were Sainz and Hamilton. 6 through 10 was Stroll, Russell, Bottas, Gasly, and Albon. 11 through 15 was Tsunoda, Sargent, Magnussen, De Vries, and Hulkenberg. 16 and 17 rounding off the finishers were Zhou and Norris. Norris didn't cross the finish line, but he did complete the 90% rule or whatever it is to be classified as a finisher. So not technically a DNF. Then we get into the 3 DNFs, and they were Esteban Ocon, Charles Leclerc, and Oscar Piastri. I was told that Ocon retired just to save the engine because there was no point in him continuing to run after all of his penalties.
Yeah, he got sent to the shadow dimension.
Yeah. Yeah, put in timeout. Yeah, so Red Bull absolutely dominated this race. Like I said earlier on, I heard later that Verstappen even turned his car down to a lower engine mode. He still was pulling away and won by... Well, I guess he won... Yeah, what was it? It says 11 seconds, but I don't think that's right. Did he win by only 11 seconds? Oh, it was only 11 seconds, but he was probably just managing the gap. 11 seconds is still a pretty
long time.
What's that?
11 seconds is still a pretty long time, and that's the gap to his teammate in another Red Bull car.
Right. Yeah, and he was probably just managing that gap if he turned his engine down.
Yeah, and the interval from Perez to Alonso was another 27 seconds. So there's your time gap right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there was another 9 seconds from Alonso to Sainz, and I think Alonso only had 6 laps after he passed Sainz. So, oh no, it was more than that. It was 11 laps. But still, he pulled a 9-second gap out on a Ferrari. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and then you have Lewis Hamilton, Lance Stroll, and George Russell. So you have Lance Stroll finding himself between 2 Mercedes.
Yeah, with
all
injuries.
Within a 5-second gap.
Yeah. I think the Aston Martin is going to be pretty scary this year. I mean, people are calling it the Green Red Bull already.
Well, I wonder what Lance Stroll was thinking, looking in front of him, behind him. It's what's going on right now?
Yeah, it's a fever dream.
Where am I?
Yeah. Pretty crazy stuff. They have pulled off the pink Mercedes strategy again, but I think even better and to more success than they did last time. So, yeah, I don't see Aston finishing any lower than 3rd place in the championship right now.
Ooh, bold. Okay.
But we'll see. Lance Stroll took P6, like we talked about, just a couple weeks after breaking his wrist, spraining his other wrist, and breaking a toe in a cycling accident. Ferrari now is
Ferrari
they did Ferrari
reliability.
things. Yep. It's absolutely insane. We'll talk about it a little bit more in paddock news, but they're already dropping engine components like it's nobody's business. Engine failure in the first race, they've been known to do this. It's just not the way you want to start your season.
No.
So hopefully they get on top of that, but it's Ferrari, so who knows? It's it's gonna be a rough season for Leclerc, I think. Again.
Yeah. Yeah, and even if Mercedes isn't really in the conversation, apparently now they have to compete with Aston Martin.
Right.
So they'll get no breaks, no mercy.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be the battle for third is Mercedes and Aston Martin, which will be very entertaining to watch. But it almost seems like there's 4 top teams this year, and the best of the rest is whoever takes P5.
Which is so weird.
It's so strange. But I'm all for it. It's very
Yeah.
exciting.
We love competition.
Yes. McLaren had a pretty bad start. In fact, they had a worse start this year than they did in Bahrain last year, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah. They went from 2021, which they were a really stonking fast team. And then in 2022 they got worse, and they're getting worse again.
Yeah. I hope, well, I'm a McLaren fan, but I'm also a big Lando Norris fan, and I kind of hope for Lando's sake that he finds a way out of his contract.
Oh,
Because it just,
that bad, eh?
McLaren's, they've been promising that the car is going to be at the front of the field for so many years now, at least 5. They've been saying, oh, next year's the year, we're going to be fighting with the top 3, and then it just keeps getting worse. And so, for Lando's sake, I know Red Bull's been kind of, poking at him a little bit, saying, hey, we'd love to have you. So if that happens, great. If he stays with McLaren, that's good for me as a McLaren fan. But yeah, I could see him jumping ship if this year doesn't get better. But it is only the first race, and they were technical failures, not necessarily speed problems. But the speed didn't look great either, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I want to see him replace Lance Stroll at Aston Martin. I think that would be entertaining.
That would be entertaining. I would love to see the family dynamics after that, though, in the Stroll family. I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know. Maybe Lance Stroll decides he wants to go and do World Endurance or something. I don't know. That's the only way I see that happening.
Bicycling, the Tour de France.
But Williams is kind of another big story. They are officially a midfield team this year, I'd say.
Yeah, they swapped places with McLaren, apparently.
Pretty much. Yeah, they're not a backmarker, at the very least. Logan Sargent impressed me so much this week. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's what I was so excited.
Yeah, I'm in my predictions last week saying he's the new Latifi, which, I mean, I don't think I had any justified reason for saying, because I hadn't seen him even race yet, other than
which
an F2.
Which also means you didn't have any justified reason to not say that, so...
That is fair, yeah. I guess if I tried to come up with a justified reason, I'd say that he was, kind of okay in F2. He wasn't on the level of... I think he finished like P6 in the championship or something like that. So, he won a couple races, but he wasn't lighting the world on fire like Piastri did in his time and Dragovic did last year. So, I wasn't really expecting too much from Logan Sargent, but he shocked me. The man drove super well, came in P12.
Yeah, his qualifying time was right there with Albon's, who has way more experience and was a Red Bull driver before he went to Williams.
Yeah.
So, for his first race to be benchmarking against that, I say that's a really solid result.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, even though he didn't come into the points, he was not far behind Albon in the actual race either.
No, I'm trying to find the gap, but it's kind of hard with the way this is laid out.
He was a 133 and Albon was a 135. So 2 seconds.
But Albon, well, now that's minutes. Albon was not lapped, where Logan Sargent was lapped on the last lap.
Okay, yeah, I was looking at it.
So he was, I don't think he was too far behind, though. Probably just maybe 10 seconds, which for his first race to be 10 seconds behind Albon is pretty insane.
Yeah.
So, very good job from Sargent. I am very pleasantly surprised, and he will only get better with time, which is very exciting for an American driver.
Finally,
yeah. But yeah, our last talking point here is that the midfield seems very tight. It's all spread out throughout the finishing order. Just like last year, I think the midfield battle is going to be very exciting.
Yeah, we even had Bottas. He was up in the points, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
eighth
got
place.
P8.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we have an Alpha, we had Williams, we had Haas, we had all sorts of cars up in the points, or at least pretty close to it.
yeah. It's like from 8th place on, we had Alpha, Alpine, Williams, AlphaTauri, and then another Williams, and then a Haas. But they're all mixed in there. It's really cool.
Yeah,
Yuki Tsunoda outperforming my expectations as well, I will say.
yeah,
I don't know. He got P11. He was challenging Albon for P10. Luckily, Albon held on to that point. I do want Williams to do well. They've just had so many bad seasons that I want Williams to have a good one, or at least an okay one.
yeah, I agree. And I think Yuki Tsunoda should be right around there with Alex Albon. I think that's about the matchup that we should be seeing.
Yeah, I'd say so. All right, that rounds off the talk about the race. Let's move into our paddock news. We've just got 2 bullet points to talk about. Both are F1 related. Toto Wolff admits that the design of the Mercedes is fundamentally flawed, and they will need to go back to the drawing board to create a competitive car. Now, with all that being said, I do believe they did draw up another concept car, so they can kind of just switch that over. I think they'll probably do that in Saudi Arabia. The only problem with that is they don't understand that car really at all yet compared to the car they have now. So they're kind of just starting fresh, which I think long term is the right move, but I don't think they're going to be that fast probably for the rest of the season.
Yeah, they probably should have started fresh at the end of last season, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Because this car doesn't look that dissimilar from last year's car.
No, they still have no side pods, and I mean they didn't change the concept much other than they figured out the porpoising problem and were able to run the car a little lower, which they kept saying last year. The only reason that they weren't fast last year was because they couldn't run the car low enough without breaking the porpoising rule. But they were able to this race and didn't look any faster than last season.
Yeah, they're actually they looked slower than they appeared at the end of last season.
Yeah, because last season they were fighting Ferrari for like the second fastest car, and this week they were not fighting Ferrari.
Yeah, Russell podiumed last year in that car, and
He won last year.
He won. I don't think I can see Russell winning in this year's car as it stands right now.
Not right now, but we'll see if they do this. If they pull the strategy that seems like most of the other teams have done and copy the Red Bull, then maybe they'll jump up the order a little bit. Who knows?
That'd be a massive pride pill to swallow.
Yeah, maybe that's why they didn't do it.
Yeah, they have to hold on to that last little bit of pride.
Yeah. Moving on to Ferrari. Ferrari had a power unit failure. It was a battery failure, but Leclerc could take a power unit penalty as early as the next race in Saudi Arabia, as he would need to use his 3rd energy store of the season when each car is only allocated 2. Rough.
Yeah, that's not a great start.
I don't know if they'll actually take the penalty because they swapped out his energy store, his first energy store before the race in Bahrain. They didn't really say if it was broken or if they just didn't like what they were seeing with it and swapped it out just in case. So I don't know if they'll figure out that problem and can still use that second energy store, then great. But if not, then yeah, Leclerc's going to take, I think, a 10 place penalty in Saudi Arabia in his second race. Rough.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe they won't ever have to take a power unit penalty again.
Maybe.
Yeah, not a great start.
Not at all. All right, that rounds off paddock news. Let's move on to the pit stop championship, first one of this season. One of the only good things that happened to Ferrari and Leclerc this race. Leclerc ended up with the fastest pit stop at 2.22 seconds. followed by Red Bull and Verstappen, and then Sainz, Hamilton, Perez, Stroll, Russell, Tsunoda, Alonso, and Albon round off the points finishers. Pretty standard stuff from last season. We have fast Ferrari, fast Red Bull, fast Mercedes, and Aston Martin, and then AlphaTauri's in the mix as well.
Yeah, although I remember McLaren being one of the faster pit stop teams last year, and they're both at the bottom.
This is true, but Piastri only had one pit stop, and it was to retire the car. And Norris had 6 pit stops, and each pit stop they had to refill the pneumatic system. So
okay, fair enough.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Norris's fastest pit stop was 8.78 seconds.
Wow.
And he had 6 of them. So that just shows you how his race went. But after that, Guan Yu Zhou had the slowest pit stop of the regular pit stops at 3.5 seconds, which is actually not terrible in terms of being the slowest pit stop.
I would say that's acceptable.
Yeah, pretty decent. Okay, so that is the pit stop championship. I don't need to go over the championship order because we just did. So we'll move on to overtake of the week. What else could it be but the Alonso overtake on Lewis Hamilton at turn 10 in Bahrain? What a move that was.
Yep. Yeah. Exciting, not just because of the pass itself, but because who was overtaking and who is being overtaken. Yep. I almost said overtooken.
Overtaken.
And kind of what it meant for the season, so it's got real cultural ramifications, I think.
Absolutely. I will say, this probably would not have been overtake of the week if Grosjean made it around the outside. But anyway, that did not happen. So, unfortunately, Grosjean did not win his overtake of the week award. But I was very happy to give it to Alonso because that was quite the move. Yeah, got the nice switchback, gave him the old switcheroo.
That's one of my favorite parts of the Bahrain track. I love that switchback portion.
Yeah. That
you
turn.
Line it up. Yeah, you line it up right, and you come behind in the first part, and then you come out ahead in the second part.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool.
Very cool. That turn 10 is treacherous and very difficult. If you've ever played the F1 game, then you know that. That turn 10 is... I think that's my worst corner in the game. I can't figure out where to brake to save my life, and I lock up every time because it's downhill. So it's a very tough corner. Kind of messes you up. Yeah. All right, let's move on to our weekly predictions. We'll talk about last week's predictions first, and then do our predictions for this upcoming race. Grand Prix of St. Petersburg and IndyCar. We'll go with pole position. I predicted Will Power. What did you say, Ben?
I had Newgarden.
And it went to Grosjean.
Yep.
So both of us pretty wrong. I imagine we're going to be wrong on most of the IndyCar predictions this season.
IndyCar is really hard to pin down, which is part of what I like about it, but it also makes it really hard to sound smart with your predictions.
Yep. All right. Podium. We did predict this in order for the podium last week, but I have changed my mind over the course of the week thinking about it. When we do our podium predictions, it's not going to be in any particular order because it's just going to be impossible to do that.
Yeah, we're not that good.
No. So we're going to predict 3 drivers each week for the podium, and if those 3 drivers are on the podium in whatever particular order, then great. But my podium predictions for this week were Joseph Newgarden, Will Power, and Roman Grosjean.
Very solid choices, usually. I had Newgarden, O'Ward, and Herta.
And you did get O'Ward, and you also predicted him second, and he got second. So very good job.
Incredible. Yeah, and I could have gotten Herta, maybe, if he didn't do a Colton Herta move and be too aggressive at the start of the race and then crash himself out in the second half.
Yeah. And I would have gotten the Grosjean if he... Oh, well, we all know what happened.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really Grosjean's fault. It was just unfortunate.
Yeah.
But, all right. So, next up, we have our winning number of pit stops. I said 3.
And I was counting on a hyper-aggressive strategy of 4. Just run an alternates all race. Just
Right.
bang, bang, bang. That was not the case.
So technically in the classification, it was 3 pit stops for Marcus Ericsson, but that counted the red flag at the beginning of the race as one of the pit stops, and in IndyCar you are not allowed to work on the car at all during red flag period. So, I did not count that as a pit stop because really it wasn't.
Oh well.
So it was a 2-stop strategy that won the race essentially for Marcus Ericsson. So that is what it ended up being. Neither of us were correct, and I remember saying last week that I thought it was more likely to be 4 than 2. There you go.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to learn to speak less.
You and me both. Yeah.
All right. Bahrain Grand Prix for last week. My top 5 was Verstappen, Russell, Leclerc, Hamilton, and Sainz. And my dark horse was Kevin Magnussen.
Yep, and I had Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton, with Albon as my dark horse.
Yep. And to remind everybody of the actual top 5, it was Verstappen, Perez, Alonso, Sainz, and Hamilton. So Ben coming out strong.
Yep, Albon even got points.
Yes.
So
Yep, I thought, yeah.
I'll take it.
Absolutely. I thought you were crazy when you put Albon as your dark horse, but now it's like, he could have good results.
Williams hype train, let's go. It's taking off from the
it.
station now.
All right, fastest lap prediction. I said George Russell.
And I had Charles Leclerc.
And everybody was expecting this. It went to Zhou Guanyu.
What? I did not catch that. How?
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. It was at the end of the race, but yeah, Zhou ended up with the fastest lap.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, I think he had one last season too. I think it was it in Brazil? It might have been in Brazil. Or Abu Dhabi. I don't remember. It was one of the last 2 races, I think, but he had one last year as well.
Crazy.
So, quick driver.
Yeah. Somebody give this kid a reliable car.
Yeah. All right, driver of the day, I guessed Nico Hülkenberg.
And I had Perez.
And it went to Alonso, and I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, well deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. He was my vote during the race anyway. So, this week's predictions, let's go over them. Pole position for Texas Motor Speedway is it's the oval. I think 375 laps. I am going to say Pato O'Ward takes pole position.
And I'm going to say the good old Indy 500 winner, Marcus Ericsson.
Gotcha. Makes sense. All right. Now the podium. My 3 podium sitters are Pato O'Ward, Joseph Newgarden, and Alexander Rossi.
Alrighty, and I've got Ericsson, Power, and Palou as my podiums.
I think both podiums are very possible.
Yeah.
It's really hard to tell, especially in ovals.
Yeah,
in IndyCar
it feels like it's been forever since I watched an oval, so I'm just kind of throwing names out there that I think will do well, and hoping for the best.
Nice. All right, and the winning number of pit stops, I said 2.
And it looks like I also put 2.
Gotcha. We're on the same page, and we'll be even more on the same page as we'll see in a minute.
Yeah. It's an oval. It's pretty easy to stick to a strategy for the most part, just because, there's a lot less variability. So I think being able to stick to 2 pit stops shouldn't be too terrible.
Hopefully. All right, moving on to our predictions for the Formula One Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. And before we get into this, I just want to note that these lists were imagined independently of each other. Neither of us saw each other's, or were looking at each other's guesses before this.
Yep.
But we have the exact same top 5.
Almost like we watched the exact same race this past Saturday or Sunday.
Yep. All right. So the top 5 for both of us is Verstappen, winning the race. I mean, how could you not? Followed by Sergio Perez in the other Red Bull, pretty standard. And then third place we have Leclerc. Fourth place we have Fernando Alonso, and fifth place we have Carlos Sainz.
We do have different dark horse choices, though.
We do. What did you put?
I put Ocon.
Gotcha, and I put Bottas. So we kind of have two midfield teams in there. I would not be surprised if Bottas has a really good race, because he did last week.
Yep. And Saudi Arabia is a pretty fast race, so I think Nathan and I both are thinking that having Red Bulls at top made a lot of sense, just given how fast they are that we saw in Bahrain.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, fastest lap prediction. What did you put, Ben?
I think it's going to be Verstappen. Although now that I saw that Zhou got the fastest lap last race, my confidence has been shaken to its core.
Yeah, I said Lance Stroll. I think my reasoning is it doesn't seem like anybody who's challenging for the lead has been getting the fastest lap as of late, just because they're generally not in clean air, and if they are, like Verstappen, he's not. I mean, he's trying to save his tires to the end of the race as well. So, it generally doesn't go to the first place guy, unless, I mean, I guess it could, because he's obviously the fastest one on track, but, yeah, I don't know. I think it'll go to Lance Stroll. He'll be a little more healed up by then, and he'll be in the other Aston Martin, and, quite possibly in clean air.
Yep.
So, all right, driver of the day. What'd you put, Ben?
I put Verstappen.
Gotcha. I think the Orange Army will come in a force next week.
In Saudi Arabia, it's possible. I don't know. If nothing else exciting happens, then I feel like it's possible that the first place driver can walk away with the driver of the day.
Gotcha. I said Alex Albon. I don't know why.
Ooh.
I think he'll have a good race, maybe.
Hey, Albon showed out last race, so.
Absolutely. All right, that runs off our predictions for this episode. That moves us on to everybody's favorite segment, Ben's Words of Wisdom. What do you got for us this week, Ben?
Okay, wiper blades. I know, they're kind of boring, but it's kind of worth spending a little extra money on them for your car. You can get the super cheap ones that are like $10 a blade, and they'll last you through a season, but if you splurge, get some nice Bosch ones. Bosch, please sponsor us. They last longer. They do a much better job. I think it's safer to have, more expensive, like the Beam wiper blades that last longer. They evacuate water and snow and all other stuff off your windshield. They're quieter. And they're so much easier to install the more expensive you get. So you don't have to buy like the $50 wiper blades, but, it's okay to splurge on wiper blades, and I think that's worth it.
Nice. Very, very important if you are in our neck of the woods where we get tons of rain all the time.
Yeah, 3/4 of the year is just rain.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that rounds off our episode. I'm choking on something, air. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like or rating on the platform you listened on. It really helps us out. If you want to see updated standings for IndyCar and F1 or a calendar of upcoming races from all sorts of different series, check out our website, RevHang.com. If you have a question about racing or even about us, hit us up on Twitter using hashtag RevHangPodcast, and we may feature your question on the next show. You can follow Ben on Instagram at BenjiMeetsWorld and myself at 2n_squared. We'll be back in 2 weeks to cover the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix and the race at Texas Motor Speedway and IndyCar. But until then, I have been Nathan.
And I'm Ben.
Thanks for hanging out.
See you guys.